Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state.
It's good to be back in the studio for all of our listeners. We've got a special guest today, and it's a follow-up from our internal PD session we had back in May in Mentone, Alabama. Quite possibly one of the prettiest places I've ever been. I've not traveled much, but Dr. Brett Johnson, he's the executive director at DeKalb County Economic Development Authority. He spoke at our session there in the Mentone Inn bed and breakfast, and it was powerful. We were all blown away, and in our survey results, they all loved it. Everybody.
Oh yes, it was like top scores all across for your session.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I picked everybody well, so
That's good. That's good. And I took a little bit of offense because we both presented and other people, but you were their favorite, so it's fine. But in studio today we have Kailah Dozier, Director of Marketing and Corporate Partnerships for the Innovation Center. So, Dr. Johnson, we're glad to have you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to be here.
yeah, thank you for having me. I'm honored and a little bit starstruck after listening for so long.
Okay, well, us too. Like I get a little bit nervous every time we start one of these because we know the people and we have an idea, but we don't like for the viewing audience. These are my notes, right? And so, but we have thoughts, and so but we want it to be kind of unscripted and just let it flow, and that's a real conversation rather than just questions and answers. But it's always good, so we're excited to have this one. So, what in the world is an economic development authority? Because a lot of our listeners, they're working, making money, and trying to spend money and make money. Which sounds like economic development, the outcome of it. So give us a rundown for the audience what that looks like.
Yeah, our organization is the local economic development organization for DeKalb County, Alabama. Most counties have a version of our entity. It goes by various different names. But our group was formed by a state legislative act, but it's a local law. So we're kind of a quasi-governmental entity, and we partner with all of our municipalities. They chip in to support our operation, and then local utilities and some other industries chip in to have an organized professional effort, kind of a one-stop shop, so to speak, for anybody who's looking to open a business in the region or expand an existing business in the county, to be able to communicate about our available assets, opportunities, and also to kind of proactively go out and market to folks that may or may not be looking in the region. So that's in general what we do. Economic development is a very broad term.
Yeah.
And so many variations of it. I mean, what you guys do is economic development, and it falls under that umbrella. So but that's the gist of what an authority is. We kind of are a hybrid linkage between the local government entities and the private business sector side, and try to facilitate all the partners that come into that mix. And again, be a centralized point of contact for folks looking to create jobs.
So it would be for small business, big business. I mean, whoever. Like,
Yeah, as a matter of fact, our Charter Act says the language is businesses of all sizes, small to large, shall be of concern to the Economic Development Authority. So it's a guiding mission of ours to make sure we're doing whatever we can to help small, medium, and large employers.
Okay. So if you're a young person or an older person, you want to start your own business. Like that's daunting, right? It's the first time they've done it, but they've got a skill, a trade, a craft, whatever. So they come to you and say, hey, I want to open up my own, car wash. Or you get this massive company that comes in and says, hey, I want to hire 200 people. And I want to put them right there in DeKalb County, right off the interstate in Fort Payne, whatever. How do you build those relationships? Because that's two different types of situations.
Yeah, and really every single business and every project is a custom approach. There's not really a great playbook. I've got several textbooks and desk references, and you try to learn from people who've been there, done that. But at the end of the day, 50% of it, in my opinion, is gut instincts on, and then the other 25% probably is strong listening skills to really understand what is going to be most helpful to get this business across the finish line to success. Then the other 25% is know-how and really knowing what your assets and resources are locally that they can tap into, and also regionally and statewide. Um, and you know, it depends on in DeKalb County, for example, with their hypothetical, if they're looking to locate that business in Rainsville, Alabama, in DeKalb County, or the other alternative is maybe an unincorporated community in DeKalb County, or Collinsville down in the southern portion of
Yeah.
our county. You know, the locations matter extremely to how those projects are handled, because you've got, of course, different governing bodies and local cultures and geographic makeups, infrastructure, sewer system, electricity, internet. So depending on what systems they would be tapping into, and what area of the county they're in, it may unlock or prevent them from having access to resources that would be helpful. So I started asking those questions, you know, and finding out, you know, what do you know? What can I help fill the gap with? And then, what are you looking for that's missing? Whether, you know, sometimes with larger businesses, it's a financial piece, a capital stack. And then we start talking about incentives and programs that are available, on the tax policy side. And then sometimes it's workforce. We had a recent case of that. And then other times it's, you know, I just need to be able to get connected to the water system. And so we facilitate those conversations. So for me locally, I have to constantly develop relationships within my community with the local players, and spend a lot of time on the front end doing that.
Yeah, you're a huge resource for your community. I feel like you just ran through a list of that's a lot to know, of how your whole entire county and kind of being an advisor for those businesses. And so, I'm drawing back on your talk with us in Mentone, and I was really impressed by just the information that you gave us. And Houston and I hear a lot of talks, and we go to a lot of conferences, and you talked about followership and influence and building relationships, and the way you delivered it, I feel like resonated with our audience just because of how we support our colleges and those that we work with, whether it's a student or an instructor or a new business. And so, for our audience, not that you go into that whole entire presentation. However, we would love to know who you are, how you came into this world of economic development, and then how those three topics have provided opportunity for your community. Ultimately, obviously, we talk about the Innovation Center and Skills for Success and all the things, and we'll get to that. But in a build up, kind of fill in those gaps for us. If you kind of told us a little bit about what you do, but for your community where you are in Alabama, followership and influence and all of those things, it was just really interesting for me to hear. And then through the lens of how does that apply to me, or how does that apply to the Innovation Center, and how we adapt and grow and follow others. So in your best way, you're a great speaker, but deliver that for our audience, because I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to share your knowledge in those areas.
Sure, yeah. First of all, I enjoyed my time with y'all. That I think I got just as much out of it as anybody else. But um, my background, I come from. I grew up in Etowah County, right outside of Gadsden, in a little town called Hoax Bluff. And I was raised by a single mother. She took care of me and my younger brother, and she had a high school education, and worked her tail off to provide for us. And so I kind of watched with awe my whole childhood growing up as to how, you know, someone with really little resource, little connections, you know, very little academic other than a high school diploma, can survive, and, you know, and then also not only take care of herself, but these two growing boys, you know, and give them opportunity. And so that and some other things inspired me to try to be like her, try to emulate that work ethic. and that commitment to just doing the best I can in everything that I do. And so I was able to go to Jacksonville State University on a leadership scholarship, which paid full tuition for my first 2 years, and I had no clue on how I was going to finish that program. But I said, I'll jump in and pray to God and see what happens. And thankfully, I ended up getting elected to the student government leadership positions there, which also have a side benefit of being able to provide tuition for the years that you're in service. So I finished at JSU as SGA president. And through that experience, I had worked with a group in Montgomery called the Alabama Higher Education Partnership. Gordon Stone is the mayor of Pike Road. He leads that group. Yeah. So he brought me down to Montgomery, and I helped him lead advocacy work for the 14 public universities in the state for a while. And I skipped over a period while I was in college at Jacksonville. I also worked for then State Representative Craig Ford. He was my state representative from my hometown, and he just asked me to come part-time. I was a young political science student, so got introduced to that legislative policy process. And then he was a very big education policy person, and then obviously going to work for the Higher Ed Partnership, continue working in the legislature with education. Went on to work for the Alabama Education Association as a PR director and a local UNISERV director. And then went to the Liberty Learning Foundation, which is a statewide nonprofit that provides civics programs for K-12 schools in Alabama. And
is that the Lady Liberty comes around to the schools?
It is. Yeah, that's the elementary program.
I'm very familiar with that program.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So, then I started getting into the workforce development piece more than anything with that, because we were trying to bring that conversation all the way down to like a second grade level, which is a challenge. But I was having fun doing that. Then found out we were going to have our first child, and then the second one and third one came along during that process. And that state representative that I had worked for in college ended up running for mayor of the city of Gadsden. And he called me and asked me if I'd come on board as his chief of staff. And he was going to be the first new mayor in 16 plus years in Gadsden, which anybody knows the history there. It was a huge industrial town.
Yeah.
Real economic hub for the state for a long time. And then really since the 60s had been kind of on a steady population decline. So he had a real bold vision to turn it around, and I was eager to jump in and help him figure out how to do that. So came on as his chief of staff, and I think righted the Titanic there and set it on the right direction. And this opportunity with the DeKalb County Economic Development Authority came along, and my lovely wife, who I met the first day I was on campus at Jacksonville State University, is from Fort Payne. So she highly encouraged me to consider this position and this opportunity, and we're loving it here. But that's kind of the background of how I got here. I earned a master's degree in public administration along the way, and a PhD in leadership just last year. So that's the background. But the whole process of studying followership and trying to understand that came about just through my trying to figure out as a first generation college student, with not a whole lot of examples within my immediate network of how to do this and how to get into the middle class and start a family and sustain it. I realized I needed to follow some people that are out there and have done it. And so I've just by nature, I've been a listener my whole life. I like to learn. I'm curious about figuring out, like I said, the people who've gone before me and how they've succeeded. And my first class in my PhD program, the professor, it's like intro to leadership, right? And the professor starts talking about this one paragraph in the textbook in one chapter that was about followership and how it's a little researched component of leadership, but the research that had been done in the last 20 years pretty much showed that followership is 50% of the leadership puzzle. And it kind of dawned on me right then as I'm thinking about what I should study with my research dissertation, that maybe I should contribute to that. body of knowledge. And so that's what I researched in my dissertation process. And the long and short of that speech and what we talked about in Mentone is that number one, there are no leaders without followers. And so getting a position or a title or doing something great, even, having a big win doesn't make you a leader. The only thing that makes a person a leader is that people are willing to follow them. And so, every day in every organization, you've got leaders at the lowest rungs of the ladder on the team because people follow them. And so looking across an organization and figuring out, who those leaders are, and often they used to be followers and they were some of the best, most committed followers of someone else. And so trying to reframe our thinking and everything that we do, that while we may have important positions and work for organizations that have a lofty mission, we can't forget that there are things we can learn all around us, and we got to be followers just as much as we lead.
What is the what's the impetus for someone who is a follower, who's a good worker, good business person, whatever, but they're just doing their thing in their own lane? What's the impetus for them to jump from, I'm following, I'm doing my thing, I'm helping out, but now I want to be the leader? I have this. Is it an idea? Is it a situation? Or is it a combination of all those things?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's a current leader extending a hand and offering them the opportunity and recognizing their capacity as a follower and as someone who's committed to the organization and its goals. Say, hey, why don't you step up? I see you're doing everything you can to fidelity to advance our mission. Why don't you step up and take on a leadership role in this project or on this team? It's usually that impetus that first gives someone the idea that they can even do it. A lot of folks we talk about, I know in the higher ed world, we talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And with first generation students, especially, they get landed in these positions and they're like, I don't feel like I'm qualified to do this. I think a lot of adults in the workforce, might have that thought. But what gives you the confidence to continue doing it a lot of times is that someone who had done it before you said you could do it or made you feel like you could do it or gave you the opportunity to do it. So that's usually the impetus. And the other thing that I kind of realized through my research was that leadership can be a fluid position. We like to divide people into leader or follower categories.
Of course.
But really, it's more fluid than that. It's, in any meeting that I'm in, I could be a leader for 5 minutes and a follower for 15 minutes, and it just depends on how that goes. And you can step up and step back and move in and out of those positions, so to speak. People who can do that usually go a little bit farther in terms of life success and relationship success, from just looking at the greats of the world, the people who've started successful Fortune 500 companies and things like that. They've usually been able to, like I say, step up and step back at the same time.
That's an interesting concept, because we do that. We've talked on this show about leading up and leading down and leading horizontal. And I forget who it was. It was it Chase Hockaday maybe about because he is a statewide role, so he's working with the new hires, but he's also working with higher ups and trying to manage all of that. That's interesting. I've never heard the concept of being a fluid leader, but that makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yep. In our world, we serve the colleges. We're not in charge of them for anything. Like they run our courses and it does great. So we lead them, but we're not their boss. And sometimes they lead us. Right now we're working through some fiscal for next year and kind of shifting things in there. So we've asked some of them to step up and give the whole group guidance on that. So,
but I think it has to work that way, because people, no one really likes to be told what to do. And so when they have an opportunity to provide feedback, or, we're all apt to do things when we have a say in it. And so that idea of leading and following opens the door for that expectation that, not one person has to make the final decision all the time. And if everyone followed, who would they, who would be making those decisions? And so, I think the tricky part of that is that if everyone at the table, for lack of better words, doesn't see it that way, that it may or may not result in a favored outcome. But at the end of the day, I say it all the time, it doesn't matter sometimes what you say, it's how you make those around you feel. And so, being part of that leadership of following and leading often has the opportunity to grow that part of your leadership, I think, with how you present things to individuals or pose questions. You talked about that in Mentone, like asking good questions of, where have we missed the mark, or doing the research on what is really needed for that community. Like in our situation, that not everyone would run all of our courses all the time, and we are okay with that. But then also the colleges having a thumb on when we roll out new things, saying, "Oh, that's one that I know that my community would want or need," versus, "Why did we choose that course? Where in the state wanted that to be rolled out?" So I think that is. I could go a long time thinking about what it would look like to follow and lead at different points in a conversation.
Yeah. Sounds like you've got enough material for a dissertation project as well.
Hey, I started my PhD, but
Yeah. So a big part of that would be trust. If you're going to be a fluid leader, and let your people be fluid in those roles too. And you talked about this in Mentone just a moment ago too, about the trust factor. So how do you build that trust with people that are new to DeKalb County, or they've been there forever and they're older, and here comes this young whippersnapper who's got all these ideas. 'Cause I've heard those people say that. Yes, young man, because you got some fancy suit and big degrees. Let me tell you how it really, and that came from a bus driver in overalls, and he was like, "You need to take that suit off so people will trust you."
he said that to you.
I said to my face, he's like, "You know why you're having trouble with school?" And I was like, "I don't." And I'm thinking because they're all crazy. And he's like, "No, because you wear a suit every day. Look around, man. Nobody has on anything but jeans and coveralls."
Sure.
And I'm like, "Oh," they say they don't trust you. And so I put on
That's
jeans,
good advice.
and took off the tie, wore a sport coat, man, changed the game.
Yeah.
So, but I had to find a way to get the people to trust me. And so you talk about that too, multiple times. So how do you help people, coach people into developing that trust with the different layers of stakeholders to get a project off the ground?
Yeah, trust is a long game for sure. And so someone like me, as you've said, I've been on this job here for 8 months, and I feel like maybe have earned some trust of some folks, but you can easily break it or lose it, or you just never know what's really happening in a relationship unless you keep a pulse. But it's definitely a long-term game. A lot of times, my approach to that is be of service to those that you're looking to build a relationship with. And so when I look at these municipalities and the mayor and council, I try to find opportunity to offer assistance for accomplishing the goals that they're trying to accomplish on behalf of their city. And in doing that, they realize that my intent is not selfish or self-serving. It's really to benefit the community and help create job opportunities. And so over time, the more that's seen, the more evidence that there is, the stronger that bond becomes. But, there's kind of this old adage that is based in research too, is the best way to build a bond between, two strangers is to give them a project to work on together.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, how that goes, right? Any team project, right? You have really people stepping up and stepping back a lot, but you start to learn about each other, you start to understand motivations, and if you can get through to the end of that, to the finished product or whatever your goal is, usually you have a stronger bond than when you started, even if you had some conflict in the process. And as a matter of fact, one of the most interesting pieces of theory that I discovered is this idea of conflict is probably the best bond strengthener than any other interaction between two people or multiple people in a group, because the key to it is getting into that conflict and navigating through it and coming out on the other side with understanding. When you get into conflict and fight and go away, that's not a strengthened bond. But it's once you get in that conflict and come out of it, it's real hard to break those bonds. And you think about the military and soldiers, and how they have to have each other's back and they're strangers. That's kind of that trust level can be built if you can navigate conflict successfully. I feel like a marriage counselor sometimes when I start talking about those kind of things, but true in personal relationships as well.
Sure. I feel like that, I mean, as you were kind of describing all that, there's countless things that come to mind, in the work environment that, or, just different experiences that bring people together in conflict. I hate conflict. I try to avoid all things. But at the end of the day, welcome it sometimes when it's necessary, just because you have the opportunity to hear the heart of the other person, the perspective of that other person. And so, in your world with businesses, sometimes it is business. They may not choose DeKalb County. They may go somewhere else because it's a better fit for their business and all the things that check their boxes. But at times I do think that conflict, I would agree, just in my own personal experiences, that it does bring people together, which is a wild concept, honestly, that would draw people closer together. And I think it's just a testament that humans are just fickle and there's so many things that can happen, but ultimately, if you can come out on the other side agreeable, that you understand those individuals a little bit better, whether it's business or friendships or marriage. That's very interesting for sure.
Do y'all think it has to be conflict with within the team, or is it just that they're going through a conflict together through something?
I think both,
Is that theory
for
work
sure.
for both of those situations?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely both. Yeah. Either way. Yeah. It's just the general difficulty, if everything's smooth sailing, things pretty much stay the same.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
There's no reason for change
it's
at that
boring.
point. Like if everything's perfect all the time, there's no reason for improvement or change or strategy, really.
Yeah, which I would say, Houston brings us into, uh, I would assume some version of that is what birthed the Innovation Center several years ago.
Went
I mean,
deep.
Yeah, you're
right.
right.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the state of
Yeah.
Alabama is at a position of where we're at a difficult spot of we really want to attract and grow businesses, but our labor force participation is struggling, and our standard courses are operating the way that they operate, and I would say smooth sailing as far as enrollment steady or increasing slightly.
Yeah.
But people are looking around going, who's going to take charge of filling the gap of people needing these skills that sometimes are pop up all of a sudden. They need to be customized. It's very agile, and so I think that may be part of what led to y'all being here today, and I'm thankful for it.
You're exactly right, and that was a hard conversation to have with the colleges. And matter of fact, my first thought was, "Oh no, we're not doing that," because the center that I work out of was the first proposed center, which was about 5 miles from where my office was, like at one of the colleges. I'm like, "What are we doing?" And so the conflict was very real, and we spent 2 years at least working that out, and it took a long time to get everybody on board. And now we're to the point where we're like, hey, y'all have to slow down. Literally, we told them yesterday, y'all need to slow down for a couple months. Like, let us get all this stuff sorted. And so they're like, now there's a whole new conflict. So what do you mean slow down? Like so it's like the change is constant. So I think the only constant is change. But that creates a whole new conflict that now together, I'm hoping we go through that conflict as a team, not at each other. I think we'll be fine. The colleges are fantastic.
I do think though that the Innovation Center brought the colleges, the workforce departments closer.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that a fair assessment? I was not at a college prior to this role. but you were. And I feel like it's almost a shared project amongst all the colleges.
Yeah, because if you could imagine, every city in DeKalb County had to run the same software. Like if you
Had to run the same way.
like some like software, like all of a sudden DeKalb County said, "Hey, we're all going to do this software for our red lights, whatever, something."
Okay.
But they've never done it together before, and now they have to. And so everybody has to kind of get on board, and that's what happened. I think you're right. I think they do talk to each other more now than they ever did before.
The competition is good,
Mhm.
and that drives a lot of or has a lot of motivation behind it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a system. It's work.
Created a system. Yeah, I think so. We're about 5 minutes from our end time, Dr. Johnson.
Oh my goodness.
I know. So we used to go about 45 minutes, and the survey says we need to go a little shorter. So we're trying to hit around 30, 35 minutes. But we talked briefly about your role is bridging that gap between industry people and skill training opportunities. Like, have you seen that scenario in DeKalb County at all?
Yeah, I have in a few different cases, but one of the things that I hear in my world in economic development at the local level, there's this concept of, we call it BR&E visits, business retention and expansion. And the idea in a perfect scenario is that members of our team are continually in the offices or the shops of the leaders of our local industry operations,
Right.
and basically conducting field surveys of, hey, just as a check-in, what's going good, what's going well, what are some pressure points, and having good conversations to learn in real time what their needs are. And in doing some of those recently, you hear things like, I'm not satisfied with what the school system in general in the world, not any local school system,
sure.
is producing. And it's, then you dig into that deeper, and it might be, well, I just can't get any of these new hires that already know how to read a tape measure. And so if they don't have that foundational skill, I can't teach them any of the things that I'm supposed to train them to do on our complex measurement, projects. And you take that information and start to ponder on, well, how we solve that. That's, you could say, okay, local school system or community college, create a tape measure reading class, right? For people to learn that skill. And that might help some, but is it going to solve the root problem, which is more so, frankly, it's parents aren't doing what they used to do. The kids aren't working with dad or mom or papa or mama on the garden bed that they need to build and learn how to read, the 8ths and 16ths on a measuring tape. That was where that was coming from 20 plus years ago. It wasn't really the rulers that we looked at, in the elementary school. It was more that practical on the weekend kind of stuff with the family. And so to look to the K-12 system, which has its standards it's got to meet, its accreditation goals, same thing in higher education, and ask them to solve that problem is unfair. But we do need to find ways to bridge the gap. And so, those are the kinds of conversations we have, and they're always looking for trained workers. But then sometimes some of these companies are looking for, hey, I just need that right person. They can't really articulate or put a criteria on what that is. Just, I know it when I see it. I've heard that several times. And that's also difficult, right, to put a class together on. But I think it's something we should look at doing as a workforce system. I mean, is whether it's some kind of boot camp program where there's a panel that rotates of industry leaders that have that intuition of knowing it when they see it and signing off, on evidence that, yep, this 5-person cohort has what it takes to learn to go to a workplace and be successful, whatever that workplace is, because they're going to get trained to do their job on the job. But a lot of these employers that I'm talking to are saying, I just can't even accept the work ethic and where these people are personally and mentally, as far as being able to be engaged to begin the process of training. So I'm hearing a lot of those different things.
That
Wild concept.
Well, it is, and I think there's actually a ACE and MAPS, from our adult ed program. So the college system right now is working. The community college system is working through a kind of a collaborative model from adult ed through the workforce department, which includes us. So there's non-credit workforce, and then there's skill for success, and also ATM, which is your high-level technical PLCs and hydraulics, pneumatics. But the base of it is if they're not ready for employment, they don't show up on time. They stop looking at their phone. They all the different. They don't have a resume. Those basic skills of making them a good. And I wrote down a basic worker program. Like not a basic employment, but it's called ACE, Alabama Career Essentials. And so I think that was something you could explore with Gadsden and Fort Payne and in that area. Then you have Sneed on the far left side, far west side. But that's something that's exactly what it's for. Is to get those folks literally, they can take those courses and get ready for some training, and then take the like skills for success or some other short non-credit, and then go to work. And then from when they're there and they're established and they're steady, they can take ATN or take a college course. And that's the whole pathway that we've been around 60 years, right? The system, and we're still telling that story.
Wait, 60. I think it's 80th. Didn't we just do the 80th birth, 60th?
I thought it was the 60th.
60th. You're right.
It was the diamond
You're right,
anniversary.
You're right.
Sorry, internal conflict here. But seriously, that's the whole point of adult ed, and ACE and MAPS may shift a little bit soon, but that streamlined pathway is right there for them. So I say the takeaway from this conversation is that we go talk to those colleges in your area and say, hey, I got a panel of my business folks over here that say I need this for my folks, and they can run that boot camp for you all day long. That's exactly what they do, and they would love to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So those employers need to know, don't send them packing, right? Because they're not working out. Send them here and revisit it however many weeks later and see if they've got what it takes.
Absolutely. That's why they exist. That's why we exist. And so it's good. Parting thoughts, Kailah, Dr. Johnson?
We're very thankful that you joined us today. If there's anything that you want our listeners to know, but we knew that we needed to get you on the show after meeting you in early May. And so just thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, thank y'all for what you do. I'm so impressed. Every conversation I have, it's always, maybe we should plug it in with the Innovation Center. So that's happening more and more. So it's obvious, it's evidence that y'all are getting the word out well. I think, just in general, all of us continuing this conversation is helpful to achieve our goals, and recognizing that, the economy is changing right now. And so that's going to make y'all's role even more important than it has been, because the flexibility that businesses are having to turn around on, in the whiplash of turning around a few years ago post-COVID, is a challenge. But I think our people here in Alabama are up to that challenge, and we've got the structures in place to make it through successfully and have stronger bonds on the outcome.
Yes, that's right.
Awesome.
Best friends on the end. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is another episode of Innovation Unplugged. Thanks for joining us. Please go like, subscribe, and follow on all our social media platforms. Have a great day.